Okay, so I came across a news item, specifically regards to facial recognition technology. Uh, it was reported on the Punch newspaper. Just give me a second. I think I can find that news item. Okay, the Punch newspaper of 22nd March 2023 actually reported that the federal government have plans to install facial recognition software across our airports. Wow, that I thought about it. That was a very nice initiative, but you see, the thing is, the legal framework, the legal framework as at the time the announcement was made, the legal framework was not in place. When I say legal framework, what do I mean? The facial recognition technology or software basically takes records of people's faces in public places, and then they are put into the database of the data controller, whoever that might be. In this situation, at the time the news item came out, the federal government had not passed the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023. So apparently now we're towards the end of the year. The Data Protection Act has been passed, and even before that, the Data Protection Regulation of 2019 had been in place. But of course, because it was not a law, it was a regulation, the effectiveness, of course, could be questionable. So now, of course, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Act, which is in place. The question is, will the act be effective enough to cater for all the possible either lapses or exposure that may come as a result of that? Facial recognition technology is intelligently designed and configured to verify the identity of a person. So if you go by the definition of of personal data, a person's face could clearly fall under that category of personal data. So, and by the provisions of the Nigerian Data Protection Act, consent by section 26, the consent of the data subject or person needs to be obtained clearly in clear terms before you can either process, store, or use the person's personal data. So I think that's the first issue that would probably pop up if facial recognition software is actually deployed to Nigerian airports across the country. Of course, in places like Europe and the UK, these are issues that have already been dealt with. The EU General Data Protection Regulation passed in 2016 was already, I think that was the original regulation that has actually sparked or inspired other nations and power blocks to come up with theirs. Because after the European Data Protection Regulation was passed in 2016, the UK now passed their Data Protection Act in 2018, and then now Nigeria now in 2023. Personally, I would say Nigeria is coming late to the party, but it is better late than never. It is better late than never. Somebody had tried to say that Section 37 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria which provides for the right to privacy, was already a legal framework that existed. But I beg to differ. I beg to differ simply because the constitutional provision was not elaborate enough. Of course, it provides the general right, but it was necessary that a specific legislation be passed that would define the parameters and define what it really meant, you know, to protect one's privacy. Now, with regards to development of modern day technology, with regards to AI, with regards to Internet of Things, and the fact that data now is, well, somebody has said, is the new oil. But we know what big data companies have been doing, how they have been mining people's data and been making serious money from it. So I think data now is like a commodity that can be marketed, that can be commercialized, and profit made out of it. So there's a very huge need to protect the personal data of citizens who are defined as data subjects by the Nigerian Data Protection Act. Okay, so basically, I've studied the Nigerian Data Protection Act, I've studied the Data Protection Act of the UK, and I've studied the European Data Protection Regulation, and I can tell you hook, line, and sinker that the Nigerian Data Protection Act copies or adapts almost everything. The principles of data limitation, of data minimization, of pseudonymization, the principles of ensuring that consent is clear and express, and the fact that the data subject has the right to withdraw his consent at any time. These principles have already been enshrined in the Data Protection Act in the UK and the EU GDPR, and now simply adapted in the Nigerian Data Protection Act. What makes the Nigerian Data Protection Act a bit unique is the fact that it now creates the Nigerian Data Protection Commission. It also establishes the office of the National Commissioner, who of course is going to head that commission. And then there's a council that runs the affairs of the commission, which is basically has the responsibility of investigating breaches and then basically regulating data controllers and processors to make sure that they act in accordance with the provisions of the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023. Where fines are placed, it is their responsibility to ensure that those fines are placed, paid, remitted, So, like I said, they came late to the party by passing the act in 2023, but it's better late than never. Now, what is important is the level of implementation that will take place. Is one thing to make the law, is another thing to enforce the law without preferences. And a very important point that has been made in the NDP, the Nigerian Data Protection Act, is data controllers of major importance. Data controllers and data processors of major importance. When I read it the first time, I was like, So are you saying that there will be data controllers of less importance and data controllers of major importance? How are we going to distinguish who is who? Are we going to distinguish who falls under the category of a data controller of major importance and who is going to be of, should I say, lesser importance if I'm to go by the provisions of the Act? But luckily, Section 65, which is the definition section, has actually made a definition of who a data controller of major importance is, which I find very weird, making that distinction or making that classification. What first came to my mind was, okay, are you going to now say this one is a major, is a data controller of major importance because of the load of data they process, or is it the volume, or is it their share capital, or is it whether it's a public company or not? Is that what will make it a data controller of major importance? Now, I hope I'm not confusing you with the terminologies I'm using, because someone who processes the data, who receives, either stores, receives, is the data controller, while the data subject is the person's data being collected. So, the data controller of major importance is defined in section 65 of the Nigerian Data Protection Act, and the definition given by the act is that a data controller, I read it directly, a data controller of major importance means a data controller or data processor that is domiciled, resident in, or operating in Nigeria and processes or intends to process personal data for more than such number of data subjects who are within Nigeria as the commission may prescribe, or such other class of data controller or data processor that is processing personal data of particular value or significance to the economy, society, or security of Nigeria as the circumstances may designate. So my problem with this definition is that it still leaves room for the commission to decide who a data controller of major importance is, which means a subsidiary legislation or an explanatory memorandum is required. So we cannot just look at the act and say, okay, AYZ company is a data controller of major importance because they are a telecommunications company and they deal with a larger amount of. We cannot say that. The commission has the power to. So I think this particular provision, I think, was very highly unnecessary in the first place, because as long as you store data, as long as you process data, as long as you collect data, you should fall under the category that needs to be regulated. There's no need for any distinction of saying this one is a data controller of major importance. So that's my 2 cents on the issue. Thank you very much. Please, if you like the content here, click the like button, click the notification bell. I'll see you in our next issue. Remember, information and legal knowledge helps you to protect yourself from both the foreseen and the unforeseen eventualities. So thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time. Cheers.